Please note, this training video makes reference to the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, the Health and Safety at Work Northern Ireland Order 1978, and the HSE, Health and Safety Executive. If you are watching this video from outside of the UK or Ireland, your organisation has adopted a health and safety management system based on and guided by these laws. However, it is important to note that the Health and Safety Authority for your country or region may have some different regulations. If you are concerned that these conflict with the information in this training video, please email your concerns to your line manager or info@workplace-rm.com. Health, Safety and Fire Safety Training. The objective of this course is to provide you with information about how everyone can enhance their safety, health and well-being through everyday behaviours. Upon completion of the course, you will be able to identify why it is important to work safely, identify everyone's responsibilities in relation to health, safety and well-being in the workplace, define key terms in health and safety, identify workplace hazards and risks, their impact and how to control them, and identify ways in which health, safety and well-being are managed and improved within the workplace. "Oh no, not health and safety," is a common complaint you will hear many times. There are many misconceptions surrounding health and safety, such as children must wear goggles when playing with conkers, office staff are no longer allowed to display Christmas decorations, pin the tail on the donkey to be banned, and hanging baskets to be banned in case people bump their heads on them. It is hard to tell where these myths originate from, but it is important to remember they are not required by health and safety law, but are internal decisions that management have made. There is little the HSE has banned other than the use of asbestos in 1999, as asbestos kills over 5,000 people each year. It is important that internal decisions made in respect of health and safety are not blamed on health and safety, but people are taught to recognise and focus on the serious risks within the workplace. Each year, significant numbers of workers are injured or made ill by their work. Key statistics about the consequences of poor health and safety can be seen here. The causes of accidents and ill health are as follows: slips and trips, manual handling, falls from height, being struck by a vehicle, being struck by moving or falling objects, machinery, chemicals, sharp objects, not following instruction or horseplay, noise and vibration, and stress. There are 3 factors when identifying causes of accidents: environmental factors, i.e. the workplace, human factors, such as individuals' behaviour or ability, etc., and occupational factors, i.e. manual handling or use of equipment. There are good reasons for managing health and safety, which can be categorised as the following: moral reasons. Employees have the right to the provision of a safe workplace. The responsibility to protect other people whose health and safety may be affected by their undertaking. And as human beings, we should feel obliged to look after each other's health and safety. Legal reasons. To comply with legislation. To prevent enforcement, improvement or prohibition notices, which can be issued by enforcement bodies, and to prevent criminal and civil action against the company. And financial reasons. It is important to help prevent lost production time, legal costs in defending civil claims, prosecutions, or enforcement, loss of highly trained and/or experienced employees, and to prevent bad publicity leading to a loss of contracts for the company. Legislation. Employers and employees have responsibilities under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 for England and Northern Ireland. These responsibilities are as follows. Employers must ensure as far as reasonably practicable the health, safety and welfare of all employees and provide suitable facilities for this. Carry out risk assessments, provide necessary training, and appoint a competent health and safety person or persons. Employees must have a responsibility to take reasonable care of their own health and safety and the health and safety of other people who might be affected by the things that they do, their acts, and the things that they fail to do, their omissions. They must cooperate with their employer regarding health and safety, comply with safety instructions and procedures, use all safety equipment properly, report any situation which they believe could be a hazard and which they cannot themselves correct, and report any work-related accident or ill health. Regulations are also in place to support the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 and Health and Safety at Work Northern Ireland Order 1978 and set out more detailed legal duties for specific activities or industries. End of section recap. Each year, there are significant numbers of workers injured or made ill by their work. There are moral, legal, and financial reasons for managing health and safety. Everyone within the company has responsibilities for specific health and safety actions, from overall responsibility to day-to-day responsibilities. Now that we have identified why it is important to work safely and the responsibilities in relation to health, safety and well-being in the workplace, we will look at workplace hazards, risks and their impact. Common hazards in the workplace. What do we mean by hazard and risk? A hazard is something in your business that could cause harm to people, such as chemicals, electricity, and working at height. A risk is the possibility or chance of loss, danger, or injury. Every workplace has hazards, and although there will be a nominated person for conducting formal risk assessments, it is still everyone's responsibility to be mindful of hazards in the workplace and minimise the risk of harm. Not all hazards are obvious, and they will be unique to your workplace. This can make it difficult to immediately identify and protect yourself and others from them. Therefore, we will focus on the different categories of hazards. The 6 main categories of hazards are as follows. Biological. Biological hazards include viruses, bacteria, insects and animals, etc., that can cause adverse health impacts. For example, mould, blood and other bodily fluids, harmful plants, sewerage, dust and vermin. Chemical. Chemical hazards are hazardous substances that can cause harm. These hazards can result in both health and physical impacts, such as skin irritation, respiratory system irritation, blindness, corrosion, and explosions. Physical. Physical hazards are environmental factors that can harm an employee without necessarily touching them, including electricity, fires, confined spaces, and extreme temperatures. Safety hazards. These are hazards that create unsafe working conditions. For example, safety hazards that could cause a slip, trip or fall in the workplace and result in physical and mental impacts on an injured person. Ergonomic. Ergonomic hazards are a result of physical factors that can result in musculoskeletal injuries, such as manual handling, display screen equipment use, and vibration. Psychosocial hazards include hazards that can have an adverse effect on an employee's mental health or well-being, and are closely linked with all other categories of hazards, for example, sexual harassment, victimization, stress, and workplace violence. End of section recap. A hazard is something in your workplace that could cause harm to people, such as chemicals, electricity, and working at height. A risk is the chance, however large or small, that a hazard could cause harm. Every workplace has hazards. However, not all hazards are obvious, and they will be unique to your workplace. The 6 main categories are biological, chemical, physical, safety, ergonomic, and psychological. Having looked at workplace hazards, risks, and their impact, let's now look at ways in which health and safety are managed and improved within the workplace. Health and safety arrangements. Managing risks through risk assessment and the hierarchy of controls. As part of managing health and safety, your employer must control the risk in your workplace. To do this, they need to think about what might cause harm to people and decide whether they are taking responsible steps to prevent that harm. This is known as a risk assessment, and it is something you are required by law to carry out. A risk assessment is not about creating huge amounts of paperwork, but rather about identifying sensible measures to control the risks in your workplace. Risks should be reduced to the lowest reasonably practicable level by taking preventative measures in order of priority. This is referred to as a hierarchy of risk and should be followed in order to put controls in place, not simply by jumping to the easiest control measure to implement. The levels in the risk hierarchy of control measures are, in order of decreasing effectiveness: elimination, the physical removal of the hazard. This is the most effective hazard control. Substitution, the second most effective hazard control, involves replacing something that produces a hazard, similar to elimination, with something that does not produce a hazard. Care should be taken to ensure the alternative is safer than the original and not produce another hazard. Engineering controls. The third most effective means of risk control is engineered controls. These do not eliminate hazards, but rather isolate people from the hazards. Administrative controls. Administrative controls are changes to the way people work. Examples of administrative controls include procedure changes, employee training, and installation of signs and warning labels. And finally, personal protective equipment. Only after the previous measures have been tried and found ineffective in controlling risks to a reasonably practicable level must personal protective equipment be used. Employers need to communicate information to their workers on the risk to their health and safety identified in their risk assessments and the preventative and protective measures necessary to control the risk. Hazard reporting. It is not just your employer's responsibility to find hazards in the workplace. Everyone has a part to play in reducing risks, and it is important to know what to do if you spot a hazard. Accident and near-miss reporting. Remember, a safe workplace starts with you. Immediately report accidents and near misses in which you are involved. What is an accident and near miss? An accident is an unplanned, uncontrolled event caused by unsafe actions or conditions that result in injury, damage, or other loss. Whereas a near miss is an event that, whilst not causing harm, had the potential to cause injury or ill health. In this training, the term near miss will be taken to include dangerous occurrences. Why report accidents and near misses? The more incidents that are reported, the more information is available about any recurring problems, and the more action can be taken to make the workplace safer. The benefits of incident and near-miss reporting include identifying trends, making sure areas of concern are acted upon, targeting resources more effectively, and increasing awareness and responsiveness. Accidents should always be reported immediately after they occur in the accident book or on WRM online. This is an essential part of complying to health and safety regulations, as your employer has to report certain incidences to the HSE within a specified period of time. First aid. Your employer must provide first aid materials, equipment, and facilities. For example, a first aid kit, eye wash kits, and first aid rooms. Requirements will differ from workplace to workplace. Therefore, your employer will have carried out a first aid assessment to identify their specific provision requirements. First aid arrangements operate efficiently in an emergency only where everyone in the workplace is aware of them and understands and accepts them. A simple method of keeping employees informed is to display first aid notices. There should be at least one notice in a prominent position on site, giving enough opportunity for employees to see them. The inclusion of first aid information during induction training will help to make sure new employees are made aware of first aid arrangements. Young persons. Your employers should already be managing any significant risks in their workplaces and are best placed to assess whether or not they need to do anything additional for a young person joining them. A young person is anyone under the age of 18. When employing a young person under the age of 18, whether for work, work experience, or as an apprentice, the employer has a responsibility to ensure that the young person employed by them are not exposed to risk due to lack of experience, being unaware of existing or potential risks, and/or a lack of maturity. The chance that workplace hazards will result in an injury for young persons is higher when combined with risk factors such as lack of supervision, lack of training, working alone, working long days, undertaking repetitive tasks, or trying to impress the boss, supervisor, or co-workers. To reduce and control these risks, employers need to make arrangements to manage the risks. These will need to include induction, supervision, site familiarisation, information, instruction, training, and provision of any personal protective equipment needed. Lone working. Working alone is not against the law, and it will often be safe to do so if the right controls are in place. Lone workers are those who work by themselves without close or direct supervision. Hazards. Often the risks faced by lone workers will be the same as for other workers, but they may also face increased or additional risks from fire, inadequate provision of rest, hygiene and welfare facilities, violence and abuse from members of the public, theft or intruders, sudden illness or emergencies, effects of social isolation. The individual might be more vulnerable than others and be particularly at risk if they work alone, for example if they are young, pregnant, disabled or an employee, and have a lack of supervision or training. You must not undertake any of the following high-risk lone working activities on your own: working in confined spaces, working in extreme weather conditions, work at height, or work using high-risk equipment. You will receive information, instruction and training in relation to the control measures introduced to protect your health and safety. Familiarise yourself with the control measures designed to maintain contact with other persons through your period of lone working. Notify your manager promptly of any deficiencies in the control systems, including any incidents or accidents. Familiarise yourself with the emergency evacuation procedures for any buildings you may be working in. If you are provided with a personal alarm, always carry it with you when lone working. And promptly report to your manager any defective monitoring equipment that is used to protect you whilst lone working. Asbestos. Asbestos can be found in any building, such as houses, factories, offices, schools and hospitals, etc., built before the year 2000 and causes around 5,000 deaths every year. The presence of asbestos alone should not be a cause for concern. Asbestos only becomes a risk to human health when it is released into the air and breathed in. Where asbestos-containing materials are assessed as being in good condition and not in a position where they are likely to be damaged, they should be left in place and monitored. The employer is required to actively manage any asbestos in buildings. Further training regarding asbestos will be provided to you where identified in a risk assessment. Information, instruction and training. Employers must provide adequate health and safety training for employees at the start of their employment, their induction, including how they manage health and safety, who is responsible for what, the cost to the business if things go wrong, how to identify hazards and evaluate risks, and the hazards encountered and measures for controlling them. Additional training, job-specific, may be required where the skills and knowledge needed for people to do their job in a safe and healthy way, for example, their levels of responsibilities, and work equipment or technology used. Providing health and safety information and training helps you to ensure that you know how to work safely and without risks to health, and maintain a positive health and safety culture where safe and healthy working becomes second nature to everyone. Information, instruction and training must be provided at induction of new starters, whenever they are exposed to new or increased risks, and Periodic refresher training. General health and safety requirements. Health and safety regulations cover a wide range of basic health, safety and welfare issues and apply to most workplaces. For example, factories, shops and offices, schools, hotels, and places of entertainment. The measures outlined in this section contribute to the general working environment of people in the workplace. Ventilation. Workplaces need to be adequately ventilated. Fresh, clean air should be drawn from a source outside of the workplace. Temperatures in indoor workplaces. For workplaces where the activity is mainly sedentary, for example offices, the temperature should normally be at least 16 degrees. If work involves physical effort, it should be at least 13 degrees, unless other laws require lower temperatures. Work in hot or cold environments. The risk to the health of workers increases as conditions move further away from those generally accepted as comfortable. A risk assessment of the risk to a worker's health from working in either a hot or cold environment needs to consider both personal and environmental factors. Lighting. Lighting should be sufficient to enable people to work and move about safely. Cleanliness and waste materials. Every workplace and the furniture, furnishings and fittings should be kept clean, and it should be possible to keep the surfaces of floors, walls and ceilings clean. Cleaning and the removal of waste should be carried out as necessary by an effective method. Waste should be stored in suitable receptacles. Maintenance, statutory inspections. The workplace and certain equipment, devices and systems should be maintained in efficient working order. Efficient for health, safety and welfare. Such maintenance is required for electrical and gas systems, mechanical ventilation systems, equipment and devices which would cause a risk to health, safety or welfare if a fault occurred, and equipment and devices intended to prevent or reduce hazards. Checklists. In addition to statutory inspections, checklists must also be completed within the workplace to identify any hazards that need attention. Checklists should be carried out for all work environments. An example of this is a monthly storage racking checklist. If you are responsible for this, do not falsify any information on the checklist. Welfare. Accessible sanitary conveniences and washing facilities with running hot, cold or warm water, soap and clean towels or other means of clean drying must be provided. Drinking water. An adequate supply of high-quality drinking water should be provided. Accommodation for clothing and, where required, facilities for changing. Adequate, suitable and secure space should be provided to store workers' own clothing and special clothing. Accessible, suitable facilities for rest and eating meals. This should include an area to obtain hot food and drink if it cannot be obtained reasonably near to the workplace. Floors and traffic routes. A traffic route means a route for pedestrian traffic, vehicles or both, and includes any stairs, fixed ladders, doorways, gateways, loading bays or ramps. There should be sufficient traffic routes of sufficient width and headroom to allow people and vehicles to circulate safely with ease. Safety signs. Health and safety signs are required in circumstances where there is a significant risk to health and safety, and where the use of a sign can further reduce the risk. Employees must understand safety signage and pay attention to them. A safety sign provides information or instruction about safety or health at work by means of a signboard, a colour, an illuminated sign or acoustic signal, a verbal communication, or hand signal. There are 4 main categories of safety signs that you may see or use. Prohibition. These are used when you should not do something, where there is a specific danger present. These are circular signs with a red border and a red crossband which crosses a black symbol on a white background. Warning. These signs are intended to warn of a potential hazard, signalling care should be taken. These safety signs are a yellow triangle with a black symbol and black text. Mandatory. These signs indicate that you must do something. These are circular with white writing on a blue background. Safe condition. These signs show a safe procedure for an emergency, such as the way to an escape route or first aid point. They are either a green square or oblong with a white symbol and text. There is an easy way to remember these signs. Red means stop, you are prohibited. Yellow means wait, it's a warning. Green means go, you have a safe passage. And the remaining sign, blue, must do, it is mandatory. Once you have completed this course, you should take a look around your workplace and familiarise yourself fully with the safety signs that you may encounter and be required to understand and follow in your specific job role. Work equipment. Work equipment covers any equipment which is used by an employee and may include hammers, knives, ladders, drilling machines, photocopiers, lifting equipment, and motor vehicles. The hazards. Work equipment may be dangerous and can cause injuries in many ways. Hit by moving parts, parts of the body drawn into or trapped between a roller or belts, cuts from sharp edges, friction burns or abrasions, crush injuries, and scalds. To reduce and control these risks, employers need to make arrangements to ensure all people using work equipment are adequately trained in its use. Some work activities require detailed formal training, but for most everyday activities involving work equipment, adequate training can be delivered in-house using the manufacturer's instructions and the background knowledge and skills of more experienced workers and managers. What to do? Before commencing work, always use the correct work equipment which has been provided for the task. Carry out visual checks on your work equipment before using it to make sure it is fit for purpose, and wear any personal protective equipment that you have been issued with before you start this work. The do's. Only use equipment which you have been trained and authorised to use. Follow site rules in relation to how and when equipment can be used. Cover trailing cables with appropriate cable covers to prevent a tripping hazard. use safety signs to warn employees, contractors, and visitors that you are working. Ensure that you know how to isolate equipment. Never clean equipment until it has been isolated from its power source and has come to rest. And ensure that the equipment is stored correctly after use and lock areas where equipment is stored to prevent unauthorised use. The do nots. Do not use your own equipment from home. Do not borrow equipment from a contractor. Never leave equipment in areas where it may cause an obstruction or hazard. Never leave work equipment unattended. Never use electrical equipment near wet areas unless it is expressly designed for this purpose. Never use work equipment without its guarding, and never attempt to remove or defeat any guarding provided. And you must never carry out repairs or attempt to remove casings or guards unless you have been trained to do so. This training does not constitute adequate training for the use of work equipment. Additional training, communication of risk assessments, and operating procedures must be provided to staff prior to the use of work equipment. Personal protective equipment, or PPE. Personal protective equipment is the equipment that can protect the user against health or safety risks at work if used correctly. PPE can include items such as safety helmets, gloves, eye protection, high visibility clothing, safety footwear, masks, and safety harnesses. PPE should only be used as a last resort, wherever the risks to health and safety cannot be adequately controlled in other ways. For those who use PPE, it is important that PPE is maintained and stored correctly, and you must report any defective PPE to supervisors. It is important PPE is worn at all times you are exposed to the risk. There must never be an exception for those jobs that take just a few moments. Additional training cards addressing individual items of PPE have been created to supplement this training video, each specifying why it is needed, when it must be used, how to use, and how to report defective PPE. End of section recap. Through the risk assessment process, the employer will continue to identify hazards and assess all physical risks to health and safety with the objective of reducing them as far as reasonably practicable. However, remember, a safe workplace starts with you. Immediately report hazards, accidents, and near misses, and follow information, instruction, and training given.